From the discussion we've had, we have heard His Excellency, the Governor of Kebbi State, and we know that he is the chairman of the Presidential Committee Task Force on Rice and Maize. Can we have one room, please, or one session? I know the businesses behind there are really out to, blend and stuff, but please, can we have one room? Thank you very much. So, His Excellency has spoken, and I take it that that is the public sector having spoken. I want to open up the floor to the private sector. Mr. Defeko, what's your take about, the thrust so far from a rice perspective in Nigeria? I mean, by that I mean, yes, we have had a lot of movement. Yes, we've had a lot of progress made. How do you see the private sector in that mix?
Thank you very much. I think the executive governor of Kebbi State has spoken to most of the issues from the policy framework perspective. And it's important as well to state from our perspective as private sector players that in the last 2.5 years, we have increased farmers. Farmers who are farming rice have increased from around about 5.8 million to about 12 million. So what we're basically saying here is that the number of farmers has doubled since the presidential intervention. So I think we should give the current government a round of applause.
Please.
Because what we've always talked about is about policy consistency. Policy consistency for us as private sector players is very important. You recall that in the last administration, we had what we call the agricultural transformation agenda. The current government has what I will christen the agricultural change agenda. The agricultural change agenda looked at the shortcomings or the gaps in the agricultural transformation agenda and decided to plug it. Because you are usually told that if it ain't broken, why do you want to fix it? So from 5.8 million or to 6 million farmers to 12 million in 2.5 years, from the CBN Anchor Borrower program of about 55 billion naira disbursed in the last 2.5 years, I think it's worthy of commendation. We as private sector players in Olam are cultivating over a hectare of around about 13,500 hectares, over 2 crop cycles. And of course, that is the home of Mama's Pride and Chef's Choice. So our capacity, it's important to note that our capacity at this point in time, has increased tremendously. And I will want to say that from our 105,000 metric tons we have added an additional tolling capacity of 90,000 metric tons. So right now we are unarguably the largest miller and farmer of rice in the country. This is not about optics. This is not about optics, concave or convex. This is about the reality of ground. And this is about what we speak to when we talk about policy. And it is important to note that we are the only company that have this kind of facility in 2 states. We have it in Nasarawa and Kano. Kano in a collaboration with a private sector company who, can you stand up for recognition, please? The man who's helping us toll in Kano. So it's very, very important to know that partnerships and collaborations are very important.
Yes,
you cannot do it alone.
I agree. Thanks very much. But I realize from standing here that Stallion will not agree with you to some extent as it relates to capacity to mill. Mr. Romolaro, what do you have to say? No, just press it, yes.
We have also, let me say we have also done a lot. The whole idea is not to compete with figures here. The whole idea is to indicate what each one of us has done to support and grow our capacity to produce rice that is sustainable. We have essentially focused on the Outgrowth Scheme. We have tried a lot to involve the individual farmer in at least 9 to 12 states of the Federation. We have had training for over 50,000 farmers, enabling them, empowering them, ensuring that they have access to the kind of seeds and the kind of extension support that they require to increase their yield. What we have realized is that the shortage that we have in production is such that you can address in two forms. You can either put more acreage to rice farming, or you can increase the productivity per hectare of the land that is being farmed. Because of the difficulty of just putting more and more land on the farming, we find that going the productivity way is the way to go, which is enlightening farmers as to the kind of seeding rates that is applicable in the different areas where they farm, enlightening them as to the timing, both pre and post-harvesting, such that they reduce the kind of losses that we see every day, that the executive governor talked about, where you lose about 20-25% of your produce just because you're not doing the right things, or you're not using the right technology. And also helping to ensure that the funding they get from CBN through the anchor borrowing program is properly utilized. Because it's one thing to have money in your hands. The other thing is to use it appropriately. So training has been a very strong aspect of our support to the community. What we're able to get from that is a very strong aggregation potential, where when they produce, we're there as ready buyers. We're there to support them with logistics to ensure that they get the stuff over in good time. We're also there to ensure that they do the harvesting at the right time, so they don't lose a lot of the produce. So I can go on forever as to what we have done.
You've made your point, and we're grateful. We've talked about finance, and the man representing finance at this up here is Mr. Liu Amid. Sir, from Nestle's perspective, and you're a private company, to my mind, how do you see the financing challenge and the play that you as a company have to bring to bear in order to solve that problem and get us to move at some faster pace, towards attaining our objectives here?
Okay, thank you very much. I want to start off from what His Excellency is going to. He made mention something in passing. I was just trying to pick up the issue with him, but we will discuss that further. About the cost of financing. It's interesting that within the national model, there's what we call the interest drawback that enables all value chain actors, from farmers to processors to everyone in the value chain. If you would borrow at commercial rates, NASAL will provide an interest rate subsidy to the actor in the chain. The question is, at a policy level, how much of that fund is available, and what can we do at policy level to improve that fund? Because for all actors in the value chain, the millers inclusive, the money is there. The money is the fact of the matter is the money is there. But at what rate? 27%, 28%? That is not tenable. But to kickstart the engine, the government working with NASAL can decide to say everyone in the rice value chain that borrows money at a commercial rate. But by the way, when NASAL steps into a relationship between the borrower and the financier, the moment there is the third party NASAL in the show, the risk perception and the risk premium normally expected goes down drastically. But even at that, assuming you are able to, because of the presence of NASAL, of our risk management tools, the interest rate comes down from, let's say, 25% to 20%. Is that still tenable for a developing value chain like rice? I don't think so, and I think even the governor will not accept that. But can something be done to enable you to borrow commercially at that 20%? But when you do pay back, we then remit a subsidy to you, which is a post-behavior incentive to about 9% or less. It's doable. So the question is now is for the policy space owners to sit down with NASAL and see how much more of that fund can be made available for good actors in the value chain that behave as and when due. That is on the cost of fund side. On the provision of funds, it's important to realize the catalytic effect of the anchor borrower using the CBN money. This is extremely important. Even we, NASAL, a creation of central bank, being owned by the central bank, we found it a hard sell to turn around the very large ship of commercial bank finance to look at agriculture. But guess what? When the CBN decided to walk the talk by putting money directly into the hands of the farmers through a structured approach, where the farmer does not see the cash, largely, but through inputs and support, the banks now are realizing that the train has already left the station, because the government has put up a space whereby the $22 billion import market that is here, the government says no more import of vegetable oil, of rice, of everything that is based on agriculture, we have got to produce it here. That means that the opportunity is here. But that opportunity can only be supported when the money market realizes that agriculture is the new growth area, not oil and gas, not trade. It is in their own self-surviving interest even to start retooling their systems to do agriculture finance right along the value chain. But yes, there is need for some policy support and alignment between NASAL and the government. I'm happy the leader of this movement, the governor of Kebbi State, who is the chairman of the Presidential Rice Initiative, is here with us. We are going to work closely together to ensure that companies like Olam, Stallion, and all other value chain actors do not borrow at an interest rate that is above what can be commercially acceptable.
Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Thank you for that feedback. Yeah, so Natori, input. I'm just trying to crack my brain here. What goes into the into the ground is basically what we get subsequently. How have you structured your operations in such a manner as to assist the government? Because we're talking about partnership here. What's on your mind regarding partnering with the government to achieve greater momentum in this bid?
Thank you, Richard, and thank you for having us. I want to speak on this from three perspectives. First, let me explain what we at Natori have been doing the past 10 years in the agricultural sector. There's no gainsaying that we are the primary drivers of the Nigerian agricultural revolution. When His Excellency was talking earlier, I thought he was going to mention Natori, the impact Natori has had on the rice revolution that's happening in Kebbi. 5 years ago, Natori seeds, rice seeds, were sent to Kebbi, about 200 metric tons of rice seeds. Early this year, some of those smallholder farmers have come back to us to ask for those same seeds. Because the ones we sold to them 5 years ago, which they kept recycling year in, year out, have lost vigor. They want some of that. So I thought that the governor was going to mention that. Now, apart from providing...
His Excellency is giving you a round of applause here.
Apart from providing seed inputs, high quality seed inputs, of course, everybody knows Natori as a premier fertilizer company, okay? Our focus is on smallholder farmers who are responsible for about 90% of our agricultural output. Now, we ensure that our products not only provide value, but that we consistently try to innovate to ensure that we come with new products that give farmers the best value for their money.
Okay.
Now, I'm going to give you an example. At our stand, you will see urea super granules. It's a variant of the urea fertilizer that is specifically meant for rice production. That brand of fertilizer improves yield by about 50% if properly used. So what we've been doing across the country, especially in Kebbi, Zamfara, Jigawa, Ebonyi, and Kano, is to teach farmers how to apply this variety of seed, this variety of fertilizer. Through the urea displacement technology.
I know you could just go on and on. I'm sorry, I have to cut you short. Okay. But yes, we know you're doing stuff. But Honorable Commissioner, subnational, we've had His Excellency the Governor, but I want you to give us a perspective on how you're engaging your populace, your farmer populace, particularly the women, you know, in this space.
All right, thank you very much. Private sector and public sector collaborations. And within our policy documents, as I said, there are 3 sections. The first is to say, what support do we give to farmers and firms? And particularly in the Southwest, where there are 2 key problems we have. One is the issue of land clearing, So the vegetation in the southwest is very different to the rest of the country, and land clearing is an issue, especially for smallholder farmers. And the second is the issue of clustering, because we tend to find that our farmers are very fragmented. And for them to become competitive, one of the things that we're talking about, typically you need to deploy services on larger parcels of land. So we're actively clustering farmers so that they can become more competitive as groups and work in cooperatives. So the first is around farmers and firms. The second is around, and then with those farmers and firms all down the value chain, from inputs to processing to marketing, we've taken a very careful look at what should the government do, what should the private sector do, and what the government does in those areas. We think private sector is better able to provide those services than the government. So our interventions are more around helping the farmer pay, because most times the farmer cannot pay. This applies to, I would say, those who are disenfranchised in agriculture, mainly women and mainly the youth. And so we're particularly concerned about ensuring that we provide incentives and subsidies to enable the farmer to pay for services that make them more competitive. So that's the first area of intervention. The second area of intervention is around infrastructure, critical, aggregation centers, irrigation, those large ticket items which the ordinary farmer cannot afford. The third area is around capacity building, and you talk about women. Many women tend not to have rights to ownership of land, which affects their ability to participate equally when it comes to sharing the rewards. Many young people don't want to go into agriculture. It's not sexy. And they see their parents who are in agriculture and they don't want to be like that parent. And so how can you provide mechanization? How can you provide capacity building? How can you deploy technology in agriculture to make it more attractive to these groups of people who need to come into agriculture at the end of the day for it to be sustainable? So in Ogun State, we're much more focused on policy. Yes, we have done projects, and many of you would know that we launched a rice project in December.
I was going to say so.
We have there also a two-fold strategy. It's very inefficient to transport paddy across long distances. So we have a strategy whereby we are deploying small-scale rice mills, mainly made of local components, not very sophisticated, which we're going to distribute across the state. So farmers don't have to go very far in order to process. The second strategy is to then go into a public-private partnership with a large-scale integrated rice mill. And so Ogun State is very much focused on policy and saying how can we at the end of the day make all our value chains more competitive, particularly rice, and make sure that women, youth can come into the value chain and all-round sustainability is achieved.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.